Welcome in to another episode of Offensively Accurate, hosted by yours truly, Atlas, aka White Boy Deep Voice, aka one of maybe 10 white Christian men standing against anything in this degenerate country of America. We have a lot to get into today. A lot more going to be focused on the cultural elements. If you read the description, we have some from the Mr. Beast group and the Dr. Disrespect, NICKMERCS, Nico, a lot of the controversies surrounding that group, just due to the fact that a couple of them all used to run together, given the fact of what has been released about Dr. Disrespect. Going all the way to a possible early admission or early evidence pointing to the fact that Vivek will be the VP. We will get into that a bit more. We have a little bit that we'll talk about in terms of HOEFLATIon and women just in general, because we got a few kind of tweets that piqued my interest from the soft conservatives, not soft conservatives, the soft feminists is a better way to say that, who normally sit and subvert inside of the conservative movement. And if you've watched me before, you have a good idea of what I'm talking about. And with that too, there's quite a bit. What is up, Sock? I know I always put the message in there because I want to make sure that it's attached. That way I don't run the whole show without having a chat box there in case people do want to put it in, but it's nice to have you in here. And that with that too, hopefully everyone coming in is having a great day. We're going to start a bit different than going right into a news story. We're going to jump into a Bible verse to actually start this off. And as I say that too, please keep praying for my parents and for my little brother and for my family in general. Still have an ongoing personal situation, and luckily right now it's we have a bit more peace, seeing how time has kind of elapsed and we got further into the situation. Again, I can't give any details. It's very, very close to home, and it hurts a lot of people who I love based on what's going on. So I'll leave it at that. So let's get right into it. First thing I want to point into this too, I want to go in a bit of a more of a Christian direction to get this started off. I feel like I've been lacking in that aspect, to be honest. And it was just kind of on my heart and mind to kind of at least start there, and then we'll get into the news after we go here. And it'll be short, so don't worry about it. And for those who don't want to be preached to quite a bit, especially not from someone who is a pastor, but this caught my attention. It's one of these common verses commonly used, and you think you'll understand where I'm going with this. So I'll put it on screen here, and it's the highlighted one. Now I'm coming out of Ephesians 6, verse 12, and this is for the King James Version. Now the New American Standard Bible Version is also good as well, but I like the King James Version. That's what I was raised on. Now, this verse is commonly used. It's actually kind of used in the aspect to, kind of downplay the fact that there is some actual responsibility or at least spiritual duty of this world. This verse is generally commonly used to be like, there's nothing to battle here in the physical realm. It's only spiritual. I have another one saying, and thank you, Sock. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. So let's start with it, right? We'll just go a little bit by little bit. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers. Now, that's generally the gist of the verse that most people understand, that beginning portion, which is we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the darkness, the evil, the spiritual aspect of what goes on in this realm. But they leave out the second portion of this verse. And it caught my attention because I saw it on Benny Johnson's show a couple of days ago, and I thought it's pretty relevant because a lot of the pushback you get from Christians is, well, the reason why we can't do anything is because, we have no initiative. There's not any initiative inside the Bible to take on these tyrannical powers, or at least not institute these things. And I've been listening to a lot of Andrew Wilson here recently. And if you're not familiar with Andrew Wilson is the blood sport debater. He was recently on a Culture War episode with Tim Pool and Richard Spencer. It was really well done on the Culture Wars, about 3 hour long. And he's someone who's been banging the drum for Christians to seek power. And when I mean seek power, not in the terms of the nefarious sense of how the liberal elites kind of claim and vie for power, but in that same struggle, vying for power in the political sense in order to then in turn be influential in terms of Christ, and being an actor or an actor in the Christian faith for these purposes. The same way that you would get someone arguing like a Nick Fuentes saying like, well, we want Christians in power, right? Like that's one of the things that we want to push for. So the latter half of this verse goes, and I'll repeat it from the beginning. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Now, I guess from a layman's interpretation, now I'm no theologian, no pastor, so I'll say that up front. I don't want people to get confused or think that I have some kind of high level expertise in this. I'm very much a layman when it does come to this. I'm just trying to learn from the best. My interpretation of this, it makes it seem like we have to battle both. We have to battle not only just what exists in the spiritual realm, but also that which exists in this world as it says it. And now it doesn't say in darkness in general, it specifically says against the rulers of the darkness of this world. Now, I think this goes, I think this goes hand in hand with the fact that the founders, they pushed against tyranny in the same exact light. And I think that's actually quite exactly what this verse is kind of pointing its nose at, which is, you don't wrestle against flesh and blood. You don't wrestle against your brother. You don't wrestle against your neighbor. You wrestle against the powers that be, the powers that manipulate, control, and bestow whatever evil and wickedness, selfishness, for lack of better terms, that they wish to, align the world with their views out of pure selfishness, humanity. And so I guess I bring this up just to point to the fact that I think there is biblical evidence for Christians to fight against tyranny of this world, not to abandon it, not to hide and cower from it, and not to, I guess, sit at home, for lack of better words. Again, I would, especially given this time period, I would find it very out of place for a Christian to sit there on a high horse and say, no, we must do nothing. We must sit in the comfort of our homes while our government, rips out the soul of what this nation is. And I guess that's the direction I wanted to point this verse, especially because it's so commonly used towards me to be like, these things aren't, it's just out of our hands. And it's like, no, it's like, do not ask of God what man can do. And, it's kind of the point that there are some things we are still capable of doing and we should do, and we shouldn't lose hope yet. Now, I do have another comment here. I missed it, saying, Andrew Wilson is hysterical and has a great message most of the time. Wish he was more popular in the conservative realm. I do as well. And it looks like he's growing. I think he's got one of the fastest growing channels that exists on YouTube, period. Now, let me actually change my camera a little bit. I'm not sure why it's off a little bit. I'm going to move it out some. And I'm going to close it on one side. That way it doesn't look like I'm sitting off in a corner somewhere. I must have moved my camera a little bit and didn't realize it. Okay. But to move off of this verse, again, just a nice touchdown to touch base with Christianity before we move forward for the rest of this. Now, I would like to start with the fact that I do believe there's high evidence that Vivek will be the vice president come this term. You can see my Facebook there for a second. Let me go to this right here. Now, there was a clip released. I think I saw it from Clinton Russell first. Let me find it here on my outline here. Yep, from Clinton Russell on Twitter. Now, it's a video, and it wasn't Clint Russell's video, but it was from Seth Lawless. And you can see it here on screen. I can make this a bit bigger, actually. Clint Russell saying this could very well be fake news. And I think you should always take your news with a grain of salt. Understand that this could be some kind of random video that was taken in 2020. And it's just being posted along with along with this information, makes it seem a bit more real. Because again, if you watch this video, it's just a Trump airplane taken off from an airport. But he says it could very well be fake news. But the claim is that Trump was in Ohio a few days ago to ask Vivek Ramaswamy to be his VP. I would be really happy if this turns out to be his pick, and as would I. And I think it would be huge if he got Vivek to be his vice president, especially given the fact that it kind of seemed like the further we got away from the primaries, the less Vivek's name was mentioned, in fact, almost being left off. And I think he was really being left off all of these VP shortlists that they kept running with, which is generally like it had Elise Stefanik, Doug Burgum, J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, and it seemed like they were constantly leaving out Vivek, which led people to believe maybe this was a bit of an ego thing between them two. Maybe it was a bit of a fear of the fact of what Vivek could do as a secondary. Would he garner more attention, be kind of like that Kamala for what Biden was, where it's kind of two names that oppose each other in a slight bit. but it was exciting. And one of the things that kind of made me kind of dampened on my vote for Trump was the fact that it felt like he was going to pick a Marco Rubio or a neocon rather than going with somebody who would garner a lot more of the independent vote, or at least more of the dissident vote, whether it was right or left. Vivek seems to capture a lot of those who are in the dissident, especially when he comes out with his 10 rules, and all of them point to traditional conservative values. Yes, Sock saying he would love it. I would love it as well, and I think it's good news, and it's a good sign, especially now that we're getting a lot closer to the fact that he needs to have his VP picked before we move into the actual election. Now, what I did find that was kind of intriguing was Fox News actually shared a Harvard poll, and this Harvard poll was showing that Vivek and Rubio both won't change the electorate, which I think is quite a load of bullshit, to be honest. Now, you can see this image here, and I'll put it on screen, big one here. Now, if I can move myself a little bit, right here, okay. You can see that Tim Scott, I think it's Tim Scott, +6. So this is the poll data that was being shown by Fox News, a Harvard-Harris poll. What I can agree with is probably the Doug Burgum and the Stefanik. Although I'm not that familiar with Stefanik, I can't really view her as being such a damper on the electorate. Now, I will say, I don't think the Tulsi Gabbard or the Ramaswamy is accurate. If anything, I would imagine that Noam would probably be the biggest loss, given the fact that she really is just a MAGA puppet. She's essentially the same exact thing as Trump. But again, we have Sock saying it's still crazy that Vivek lives down the street from me. Yeah, that's crazy. I know. It's actually kind of awesome that he lives in Ohio. And I think that is also another big piece, and I'm glad that you brought that up, another big piece of why a lot of people are not so quick to pull the trigger on being so for of a Vivek vice presidency or being attached to the ticket is by the fact that he has not served office. I mean, period. Now, he's proven himself on the big stage by being charismatic and by being able to talk the talk and do all of the hand motions that go along with what it takes to be a good candidate, especially one that can command an audience. But what we haven't seen so far is we haven't seen him actually execute, be successful in policy. None of those things that I think matter to at least some people, especially when we're looking at the macro, the big picture. There are people in small pockets that do hold this to be of some metric, of some value, and would probably otherwise not vote for him, given the fact that, if you remember, a lot of the negative media against Vivek Ramaswamy has been a lot of the, what are his origins? Like, he kind of, in his early days with his book, he kind of like flip-flopped a little bit between like his stances on COVID, and there's some kind of like slight mystery there, and I could even be wrong on the flip-flopping, but there was some at least enough to pique the interest of people and go, okay, wait a minute, is he a charlatan? Is he really about what he's actually saying? And you see, Trump didn't serve before 2016, and that's very true. That's actually a really good point as well. And again, I don't think that the people who are holding Vivek to the standard of, well, he's never held office, I don't think those are the ones that they're going to swing an election, right? I'm more so just kind of pointing out, I guess, stuff that I've seen on Twitter and from more, not high tier politicos, but I follow a lot of different political people, and some of the mid-size accounts in between like 10 to 20,000 followers all seem to kind of point to that, which again, it could be some kind of astroturfed against Vivek by being like, well, he's never held office before. But you're 100% right. Trump never held office. And in fact, that was the big reason why people wanted him in office. They wanted somebody who wasn't a politician in office. I guess Vivek doesn't have that same sway, given the fact that he came from pharmaceuticals and he's got such like a suave, or I guess a, kind of that slimy businessman kind of greaseball type thing. It's very funny because he's like the opposing to the Gavin Newsom. They're both like these high tier businessmen, slicked back hair, but I like Vivek a bit more, and he's a bit more spiffy and got energy to him. We got what's this? Peter Nielsen saying John Galt for VP. Yeah, who is John Galt? Unfortunately, we have we've well crossed the threshold into being in this dystopic nightmare. What I don't get with this is the Tim Scott thing. The +6 on Tim Scott, I don't really understand that. I don't know, nor have I seen any people, or at least even in the media sphere, being like, man, dude, if he gets Tim Scott, I'll definitely vote for him. I mean, like, I guess. I mean, to me, he would be kind of like that paper-handed, he'd be like Mike Pence, just black. And I think you could even, I mean, take that up a notch with the fact that he even doubled down, Tim Scott did, in a recent interview or recent conference he was with by saying that he agreed with Mike Pence's stance when he did put forward the electors or the board of electors in the last presidency when Trump lost in 2020. But again, I think it's a good sign to know that it's not dead set on Rubio. I think that there's a good chance it could be Ramaswamy. Now, this isn't the only evidence. Now, obviously, this is just a graphic here, but the evidence of the plane. But on top of this, let's go here. This is one of the stances I get from that I've seen, popular. Now, Florida Dad's, again, not a huge account, but I've seen this kind of sentiment repeated often. Now, Florida Dad's not even at 10,000 followers, but he does have some people who follow him. He's regularly interacts with like Scott Pressler and people of that nature. What he's saying here, he's saying, honestly, Vivek would be the perfect vice president choice for Trump. He's nothingness and everything in the human form. He's an avatar for anything you want him to be. He's capable of making any crowd believe he's on their side. Christian conservatives, he's Hindu. Libertarians, he's a pump and dump pharma bro. And MAGA, he hated Trump and never voted until 5 minutes ago. Now, I can't verify the he hated Trump type thing. Again, always take that kind of stuff with a grain of salt. But again, as far as I can remember, there was either a book or articles published by Vivek that spoke at least not 100% alignment with Trump, obviously, but I think it spoke some reason to it. And again, I don't think anyone is 100% aligned with Trump. Again, I'm only like 70% aligned with Trump. And a lot of that is just because we can agree on a lot of the same things are bad and need excised from society. Where I don't align with Trump is a lot of the same things that I don't align for Vivek, which is he's not truly a Christian conservative. I'm not sure the extent of which he's Hindu, but he does at least recognize the living for something greater than yourself. I mean, he puts out the fact that there is a God, but I think that common pushback from a lot of Christians is which God? And I think that's fair criticism, to be honest, especially when we are a lot of what the prerogative is in the framing for what we need to do is saving the country. So I'm going to imagine that most Christian conservatives and evangelicals are going to view their vote needing to have some kind of religious integrity to it. And this isn't everybody, but I think this is a meaningful population, a demographic of people who would be more at peace if there was a more forward-facing evangelical nature to the fact with Trump. And that could be done by a simple proxy of having a harder, more conservative stance on abortion and not doing this moderate kind of flip-flopping that he does. Again, still voting for Trump, but again, just reasons to point out like why this isn't the end-all be-all. But he continues by saying, like Kamala's favorite empty calorie slogan of what can be unburdened by what has been. Vivek is unburdened by any laws of political gravity, having never had to put forth a policy position, lobby people to his side, and have a tangible product on the other side. He's political jello. Now that I will actually disagree with by the fact of he was in pharmacy. He did make a huge name for himself. He rose and grew in an exponential amount of time. I think he's proven the fact that he can put a product on the table. I think what we need to see is how loyal and how grounded is he in what he's putting forward, or is he someone who can, at the drop of a hat, change what their top priority is? Now, I'm not accusing Vivek of being that, but I think that he is someone that the people still need to see a bit more from. Even me, it's a little, just like a little bit more. And I think once seeing him in office after a couple months will put a lot of these issues to rest. But again, there are people out there who aren't going to vote for Vivek. Now there's another article here, I guess not really an article, but another piece pointing to the fact of who it's limited down to. So we don't know who it might be, but we have a really good idea of who it's been limited down to. Now, if you can read this text here, it's from Ashley Nicole, and I'm not sure who this account is, but again, another smaller but decently big one, followed by Charlie Kirk and Gunther Eagleman. She says, so if these people are going to the watch party and the vice presidential pick is attending the debate, none of these people are Trump's VP pick, right? So who does that leave? Tim Scott, Vivek, and Tulsi Gabbard. But what you'll see here is this is the watch party, right? For the first presidential debate. And you can see down here in the text, I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor, but forgive me. Ben Carson, so he's out. Doug Burgum, he's out. Lindsey Graham never had a shot. Marco Rubio, so he's out. J.D. Vance, so he's out. and then Byron Donalds, Wesley Hunt, and Elise Stefanik on the other side there. So if what she's saying true, and I believe it is, which is that they did announce that it will be, the VP pick will be joining him at the debate, I believe is the way that he addressed the announcement. It leaves those three options. Tim Scott, I'm cool with. It doesn't move the needle for me anymore. It just is like, that's the Trump ticket. With Vivek, I'm like, okay, this is like the prime ticket. This is what I wanted. This was like the best case scenario, because like, what better candidate can you really think of to slot in for Trump that would actually take the role? And it's not one of these like, faraway dream kind of candidates, like putting in a Hulk Hogan or a Tucker Carlson, people who would not take the role on for any amount of money or servitude. But Tulsi Gabbard, it calls in a little bit to question, because I do like Tulsi to a degree, but I think that there are still a lot of, kind of socialist, egalitarian leanings that she has that I don't think are good for the social fabric, the social policies of what's going on moving forward. I think we need to get away, and I'm going to say it again 100 times, like we got to get away from just trying to appease the women by like getting a +1 by getting Tulsi Gabbard in there. It's like, bro, just get the best people in there, stop trying to, especially too, because it's like, Tulsi Gabbard showing up a -1 there. It doesn't move the needle a lot, and I think it only opens up your ticket to have a lot of left-leaning policies somehow finding their way into the administration when they shouldn't be. For me, it's like, I'm not going to not vote for Trump for Tulsi Gabbard, but out of those three, I view that to be the weakest. And it's not like I like Tim Scott either. So it's like a 1, and then it's like, spot 2, 3, 4, and then it's like Tim Scott and Tulsi Gabbard are like down there in the middle. There's clearly some other ones I would like to have. Like I saw people pointing out like Mel Gibson photo shots of being like, we know who the VP is, and it's Mel Gibson like winking at Trump from a random distance. And I think that would be cool if we could get, Mel Gibson as a vice president. I think that would, for the normies, I guess, not that I'm personally motivated by it, but I think the normies, and it would get a lot of people to just kind of get hyped up for it, especially given the fact that Mel Gibson comes with so much kind of patriotic vibes with him. Is probably the best way to say that. Now, there is another statement from Candace Owens, when I think Candace Owens has a really good mindset and frame set when it comes to what the people want. And I'm more aligned with where she's at, which is, again, the dissident right, the non-Daily Wire crowd. So it's a 3-minute segment from Candace Owens. We'll go ahead and give it a listen, because I think she's pretty accurate here on the way that she's kind of splitting hairs on who she would pick for VP. Now, this is from Liam McCollum, but this is Candace Owens endorses Vivek Ramaswamy or Thomas Massie, somebody who I wasn't thinking of, but again, I would like a lot too, ahead of a Tim Scott and ahead of a Tulsi Gabbard for Trump's VP pick. And she said she will not vote for Trump if he picks a neocon like Nikki Haley, Tom Cotton, or Mike Pompeo. Now, I'm not that far out. I'm of the mindset where I like, no matter who Trump's picks, I will be voting for Trump. Now, I mean, if he picks Nikki Haley, that for me would be no. I'm just not even going to vote. I'm not going to go vote for Biden. But you come out here and you pick a Nikki Haley after everything we know now, it's like, okay, dude, like you're not going to betray the American people like this. Like, you're not going to have my vote, but I'm not going to vote against you. That's just kind of the mindset I got. So let's go ahead and give it a listen. This is from Baking Points with Crystal, and I can't remember that other name. Let's go ahead and give it a listen. Again, if the volume has any issues, please let me know either which way or from Sunday. I'll turn it up, turn it down.
Candace, who do you think Trump should pick as his vice president?
Vivek Ramaswamy.
Interesting. Okay. Why do you think it should be Vivek?
Because I think that Vivek Ramaswamy is just one of the most brilliant minds I've ever been around. And I think what he needs is not a person that is saying to him, oh, there's so many documents being thrown at them. Take a look at this bill. Vivek Ramaswamy will do the work. He will read everything. He will grasp the difficult concepts, and he will be able to present to Trump why what he is doing is or is not America first in a way that is clear. And
in a less even political sense than that too, I think Vivek is like the youngest candidate even out there, like in the entire pool, in the entire field. I think by proxy alone, you just get somebody in there who's under the age of like 40 years old, or at least can speak to the youth and can be like connecting back and forth. Oh, am I muted right now? What's up, world? Hopefully I'm not muted. Hopefully that text was late, Sock. Hopefully I'm not muted. I see my sound looks okay. Hopefully this is not muted. I appreciate the look though. What's up, World? I haven't seen you in here in a long time. We got to get in a collab together again. But to go to what I was saying, make sure that's okay. I believe just by gaining the youth vote, you put yourself in a huge position. And I think Vivek speaks very strongly, if not the most strong, to all of Gen Z, all of the individuals who are kind of maybe timidly paying attention to politics or are single issue voters. They see Vivek and they see fire. They see fire in somebody's eyes. But I'll go ahead and play the rest of this.
That's what he needs. He needs a business partner, not someone that doesn't have that capacity.
I think it might have just been late.
Ramaswamy is the way to go. And I'm nervous that if he picks somebody that is a neocon, so to speak, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that Trump is taken out and that person becomes the president of the United States. He's got to pick someone who's unapologetically America first and not somebody that is afraid to say things boldly.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson said he wouldn't vote for Trump if he picked Nikki Haley as vice president.
I wouldn't
Is that
either.
how you feel? Interesting.
Yes.
Also,
that is
what
how I
about
feel
Tom
Nikki
Cotton?
Haley.
What about Tom Cotton? What about Mike Pompeo? Any of those other folks, if they were to have a place in the Trump administration?
He should not go within 10 feet of neocons. And if he's reading the room correctly and he's seeing where America, where the American conscience is, especially under the MAGA party, we want real, unapologetic America first.
Candace, what did you make of Mike Johnson and the passage of the Ukraine aid? I mean, allegedly did it, at least with some Trump support. Were you disappointed in that?
I am disappointed that listen, my dream for president right now would be Thomas Massie. Okay? Because it seems to me that he is the only person that does not make any concessions. And obviously, I understand that given Trump's position and what, in terms of what he's trying to do, inevitably we can preach and we could say, oh, here's what I would do. You inevitably are going to make some concessions, but I think Thomas Massie has the correct perspective on the way things should be handled. So he would probably be my number two in terms of, actually, I'd be happy with Vivek Ramaswamy or Thomas Massie.
I think that's fair. Going like a 1A or a 1B. Oh, you're fine. I thought it was a little slow. I know I changed the latency a little bit back, so I think the chat is like 15 or 20 seconds delayed behind me. But I appreciate if you guys let me know, because like there have been times where like I did not know, and it just cost me like 5 to 9 or 10 minutes even of good video, just being silent, having people click off. I don't think that Vivek captures the same audience at a national level as Vivek, or I don't think Thomas Massie captures the same national audience that Thomas Massie does, or vice versa, the other way around, I can't speak. Really by the fact of Thomas Massie is not, I guess in the last couple of years, not putting his name out there in the running nearly as much. Now here recently, given all the Israel stuff, he's been a lot more talked about because he seems to be only one of the few people willing to put a hard line against all of the concessions we do give all of these foreign lobbying groups. And I think just by proxy of that's where Candace has been putting the majority of her prerogative, her paradigm of where she's looking at what's hurting America most has been recently in this aspect of all of the foreign influencing. It makes sense why she sees Thomas Massie to be on that same level. I like Thomas Massie a lot too, but he also comes from a more hardcore libertarian positioning than a traditional conservative Christian. And I think if we're looking at how the pendulum is swinging, we need to get the most conservative, the most Christian person you can get in there. And I think Vivek, although not being Christian himself, is a little bit more of that than I think what Thomas Massie is, even marginally, like slightly percentage so wise, but either one would be good. I think both of those would be good. I don't even think though Thomas Massie's even willing or wants to run for something like that. But if I'm moral saying I love Vivek for vice president, although I don't know if he moves the needle for Trump, would make him a strong candidate to run in 2028 if he is selected and Trump wins. And I think that's what we're looking at. I've said this before too. I think come 2028 when we know, this is outside, maybe Trump could also institute, no term limits during his presidency. So, but I don't think he will. But if you're looking at 2028 and so forth, I don't think it's going to be an easy slot in for Ron DeSantis. I don't. I think, in fact, Vivek will be the primary candidate in the polling data, even in the estimations and projections looking at 2028. I've never seen a campaign be burned to the ground as badly as what Ron DeSantis did. I think that was one of the worst, I mean, if not the worst in all of human history, but it could be the fact of, this is how social media works. X is free range, all the free speech. We were in kind of an odds position, an odd year. I agree with that though. I do think he does move the needle for Trump. I know, and maybe this is purely by the fact I live in Ohio, but I know a lot of people who are willing to vote for Vivek over Trump in this area specifically. A lot of those reasons still being attached to the fact that they don't like Trump. Now, for whatever reason that may be, and for how, shallow that reason may be, it's still there. And you still got to take it with some level of importance or significance, because you have to understand, although you might disagree with the fact that these people are like, well, I don't like the way he talks, they're still going to vote that way, whether you disagree with it or not. Now you have, it's a sock saying he would be the first good Indian VP, and he's actually Indian, not Jamaican. Yeah. I don't even care like what color he is, right? Like, and I think, like, for me, I would much rather have a black Christian in there than a white secularist. Like, that's where I'm at. And I'm viewing things from the fact of, if we're intent on actually fixing culture, the main priority has to be where their ethics come from, right? And so you don't get ethics from the color of your skin. You get ethics from what your belief foundation is, or what your moral foundation is. And so I'm really tired of getting these people who come in there with no Christian framework whatsoever. And their moral foundations is like, we just don't want to have any problems, right? And what you get when people go in there, and again, I'll say it again, the indifference, right? Or tolerance being like the number one tenet. Like, that's what you want in a president. You want someone who's not going to, he's not going to have any problems, man. Like, everyone will get along. And it's like, no, like getting along has gotten us to the point where we're at right now. And even Tim Pool points this out, where America fell because Christians were too tolerant. Christians said, yeah, do this. Go ahead. Yeah, it ain't bothering us. Oh yeah, go ahead. It ain't bothering us. And now here we are. After we gave them all this power, they're sitting over our heads and being like, yeah, good luck ever making this nation Christian again. And they spit on you. It's like, dude, like, this is why. And there's a lot of people who don't like Vivek that also are a lot of the dissident right people who I like most of their other opinions will come at this from that same angle, being like, I'm not voting for Vivek because he's not white, and because they're voting from racial lines. And I'm not at that juncture, and I don't think that's the correct way to view it. I understand the sentiment though. I truly do. But it's more so not the racial politics, but it's the religious politics. And that needs to be the main center of focus for when we're looking on what we need to do once we come into power, and how these changes need to be handled, coming from the Christian framework, not from a secular perspective of like, well, this isn't bothering anybody, or not from the non-aggression principle, like a libertarian, from Christian ethic frameworks. And, maybe Vivek is a charlatan, and maybe he won't do it, but I view it to be a possible reality with Vivek in there. Tim Scott less so, because I think he is one of those kind of neocon establishment kind of guys who's just there. He says all the right things. He's like, he's like, I'm Tim Scott. I'm Black Republican, man. Yeah, I'm gonna go shake your hand now. Like, that's the kind of vibe I get from Tim Scott. Like, kind of like a fake, maybe not fake, but at least paper-handed, not strong, and he'll probably listen to the first donor who comes in the building with $500K, and it's like, hey, Tim Scott, you vote for this, and here's $500K. Well, yeah, man, I'd love to be the first Black Republican man who does this. I mean, I'm like, and I'm not saying that to be racial by any means. I'm just saying that by like, if you're a one-trick pony, I like that, I'll take Vivek instead. And then, yeah, we have Peter Nielsen saying Trump, man, I keep messing up my words. Trump doesn't trust Vivek, in your opinion. I don't even know if it's that he doesn't trust Vivek. I think it is their camps are misaligned, not even misaligned. Their camps don't overlap enough. And I think that's the reality. Now, there's multiple things in there too. And I think a portion of it could be the fact that Trump doesn't trust Vivek, not to maybe stab him in the back, but I don't think he trusts Vivek to stay in the shadows during his presidency. I think it could be a lot more of an egotistical battle. It could be a lot more of like, well, what happens if, you know, your VP all of a sudden is gaining all of the groundswell and all the momentum, and people are more willing to take on his ideas and what he's saying, and rather than the president. And that creates a weird conundrum where if the VP becomes the hot shot and gets all the talking points and he becomes all of the rage in the news, then that clearly has a direct effect on the influence in the hierarchy of the presidency. And I think more so that's probably what Trump is looking at in terms of like, could I be usurped during my own administration in my final term? And can we trust to bring him in and him not derail things once we've fought so hard and so much to get to where we're at? And it's like, especially being in Trump's positions after being, you know, all these convictions, all of the nonstop smear attacks, the campaigns, going after his family, is like, do you want to take that risk that this man might usurp you after you fought all your way back to get into this office? And yeah, you're 100% right. He is very young and he's ambitious. And I think that that spiffy nature to him is the reason why he's getting so much, or at least piquing enough people's interest that he went from, you know, a 0% to 8% in 1 year, which is nearly unheard of, especially given the fact of all of the history of the libertarian candidates and independents coming out. And, you know, he was the closest to Ross Perot in terms of gaining that groundswell momentum, coming up a new election. We covered, I guess, here with the gist of what we know for what's going to happen with the Trump VP pick. I'll go back to this this tweet over here from Ashley Nicole, I believe. So it's narrowed down, again, I'll make this big. So it's narrowed down to essentially Tulsi Gabbard, Tim Scott, and Vivek. That's what we are looking at. You're saying VP in 2028, president most likely? Well, not if he takes Tulsi Gabbard. Like if he was to take a Tulsi Gabbard as his VP, I can't see Tulsi Gabbard being the step-in leader for the MAGA movement or after Trump. I think that they're trying to take that into consideration as well, because I don't think you want to have created this occult-like movement in MAGA that kind of has broken away from the neocon Republican right and then let it wither and die by allowing, you know, Tulsi Gabbard to step into it, or at least not giving the right or correct pathway for the heir to take it over. And it's not even like Tulsi Gabbard's going to want to take it over either, especially because she's not morally aligned with what the MAGA movement is. Only partially so, you know, she's the Marine girl who's got some good views on 2A, but it's like kind of awkward on a lot of other issues and seems kind of socialist to me, to be quite honest with you. But it's looking good. I think that was enough of it gave me enough of a heart flutter where I'm like, oh man, like, okay, like it could be real, man. It got the excitement going again because it's been short list after short list of neocon after neocon. And then what's Trump's biggest issue with his first administration? He hired so many neocons, hired so many poor people. And so I'm begging to not let those mistakes repeat themselves. And I got a good amount of faith in people like Kash Patel and those that are in his administration that staff it up, that we're not going to see a lot of the same mistakes being repeated. So, but again, time will tell. We are going to hard segue from this because that is all I got for the VP. I was hoping a bit more was going to come from that, but I didn't see much. I would like to stay on this very political bent while we're here. This is a recent one that I saw Kamala Harris. I'm not going to spend much time here, but dude, some of these tweets from like, I promise you, some of these tweets I see from the president and the Biden administration is just so like, it's like they're trying to piss you off. But then again, rage bait does well, so it makes sense. It's like, this is what they're trying to do. They want me to tweet against them, dude. You want me, dude. You want me so bad to engage with this. I won't, though. She says if Donald Trump gets the chance, he will sign a national abortion ban that would criminalize abortion in every single state. We are not going to let that happen. I could only wish that Donald Trump was that based. I wish he was as based as Kamala Harris thinks he is. But I don't think he's going to do that. And that's, again, where it comes in, where he's got this kind of moderate take. Yeah, Bolton was a terrible hire. And the fact that he was campaigning here recently, given his such unglorious exit, is like, where is he still getting the money to put his face on billboards? Like, Bolton, go home, man. Like, or become a Democrat, though. You're just not welcome here no more. Like, Bolton, need to get out of here. And she goes, when Congress passes a law that restores the protection of Roe, President Joe Biden will sign it into law. And I'm sure he will. I have no doubts on that, dude. They'll do anything to make sure they protect their ability to kill unborn children. And it's not a right. Healthcare isn't a right. You have no right to someone else's labor. Even if you want to take it outside the realm of abortion, you have no right to make a nurse help you. You have no right to force someone to do anything for you. But let's take it a step further. You have no right to kill a child. You have no right to annihilate a fetus. It's not a right. And I don't know where we start. But again, it's this language, this linguistics battle, this semantic, like we're going to move to definitions. We're going to make it hard and obfuscate what we're really talking about. You couldn't possibly be against a woman's right to her health care, could you? What an evil person. It's like, yeah, but what they mean by that is like, yeah, her right to hire a doctor to take pliers and shove it up her, you know what, and yank a child out of it in broken pieces. Like, what about that is a right? What about that is like, oh yeah, like these are things that like God gave you. Like, no. But the framing's all bad, and we run with it. And you have conservatives be like, no, well, I'm not against healthcare. Right? Like, no, don't do that battle, dude. Just start from the front and be like, dude, no, you're evil. You want to practice some kind of satanic ritual where the only way you can keep power is by constantly virtue signaling and appeasing the most evil and degenerate demographic we have in this country. And they're doing it, they're feeding it, they're growing it. It gets bigger and bigger each year. It's the only way they can maintain power is by holding on to these just ridiculous things. Like, even if the Democrats came out and said like, hey, like we're not doing abortion, we're going to go with the Republicans win a landslide. It's like one of those like single voter issue type things with a lot of like girls, they hang on to these kind of votes. But not to stay on this too long, again, I just want to make the point. I wish Trump was as based as they always kind of make him out to be. And again, it's kind of this attempt for people who I guess don't pay attention or only kind of follow Kamala's, is kind of pull the wool over their eyes and be like, yeah, Trump's going to come in and he's going to knock abortion out of this country for hundreds of years. And it's like, bro, he literally like the other day walked it back and was like, well, there's sometimes. It's like, bro, he's not the most contrition. He was literally asked about his personal relationship with God. And he was like, well, Christians love me. That's not an answer. I mean, it's cool that Christians like you, bro, but what does it have to do about your personal relationship with God? It makes no sense. But he's really good at moving the conversation away from hot spots where he's not good at. He's like, whoa, we can talk about God, but what really matters is, he's really good at kind of maneuvering his way around linguistics. He has to be. He's Trump. He's been in the spotlight for Lord knows how long. But this is going to be, we're going to go into the cultural aspects. We're going to get into a bit more of the nitty gritty. We're going to get more into the degenerate nature of what goes on, and kind of a bit of a white pill, to be honest. But if you've not been following along with what has been happening with the NICKMERCS situation, the streamers, we now have kind of this like pseudo battle going on that's been going on for a couple of days now between, you have NICKMERCS and Dr. Disrespect, right? They're boys. I'm not that familiar with these guys. I only know them, sparingly from the recent media they've kind of made, or the news headlines they've made recently. But now we're looking at the fact that Dr. Disrespect is getting canceled by his own gaming company. They announced that like an hour before I went live. And it's all due to the fact of this weird allegation that can't be verified with no evidence coming out about something to do with why Dr. Disrespect was banned from Twitch. But we're going to start from the top here. We're going to start from the very beginning. We'll go to this very first one from NICKMERCS.